Hi everyone, how are you? So I am back with another video, and as you can see the title here, I cannot make it more clear. I just finished reviewing a paper just now, and sadly I had to reject the paper. And after that I was thinking maybe I share with all of you the reason why I did not give a major correction but decided to go with rejection. Um, without disclosing too much of the paper about the paper or the journal. So let's go and see what are the three things that made me reject the paper. So the very first reason that I had to decide toward rejection is because the paper actually did not have any contribution. There are several issues here that I had to look at. I looked at actually. So the paper in reality, when I accepted this paper for review, it looked very interesting from the title, from the abstract. The topics were very current, contemporary, and something that I am very interested to do my own research on. But when I started to read the paper from the introduction, it came to my understanding that the authors were actually trying to do something solely on the basis of not having enough past findings on the interconnection between the variables. What does it mean is that uh, in the past there has been analysis between, for example, variable A and B and C, or A and C. So there has been a huge amount of research already conducted on the interconnection between each segment of those research variables or topics, but there may not be, or maybe there has been, or not too much research ideas or research results looking at A, B, and C together. But the issue here is that that should not, or that may not be good enough to proceed and continue and complete your whole paper. What I'm trying to say is we have to link the research issue with something like concrete or real. So one of the major problem is that there was no research problem to explore. So it's all about the theoretical like foundation that is related back to maybe A can have an impact on B or B can have an impact on C. But how does this comes back to the real life practice? That was missing. So there was one of the major reasons from me. Again, this is my own opinion. I am not saying that everybody will agree, but my opinion is that if you are doing a research and it has no connection with the real world, it will not go so far. You will not be able to connect with the audience, and it does not benefit anybody. So that's one of the reason. No clear research problem, not a concrete research problem that should be explored, and then there was not enough justification either from theoretical perspective or from practical initiative or any examples. Nothing was there. It's just one of the rationale was mentioned is because there is no evidence, we are doing it. It may not be a very good rationale to conduct the research. Okay, moving on to the next reason that I was looking into is this part is quite important because if you have missed a paper in your literature review, you can add back. So that is not a very big issue. If your literature review actually does not provide any critical explanation. You can also work on it. It for me is not a big issue. But when you are going in the method section and it is a quantitative paper, we should be very careful that how we proceed, irrespective of whether this is done based on a survey or secondary data. The paper I reviewed has done a secondary database study, which has used Refinitiv. Now, I can understand Refinitiv is a very good database. It's user friendly, and most universities are accessing Refinitiv. So we have the access to the data, so it may motivate us to continue and do the research using the data available in Refinitiv. However, when you are going for the actual study and you are explaining the sample, it has to be very clear because uh, you might end up with reviewers like me who will actually go in and will do my own examination of the sample that you have chosen and the sample that is available. So that's something I always try and do whenever anybody has done any secondary database study and they mention the database they have mentioned and the sample that they included. I will try to go if I have access and see what are the actual amount of firms that are available for us to study from the contents that the study is going on. And in this case, this paper mentioned certain number of firm level data that they used, which is really, really small considering the amount of available data that I actually can get from the database. So they only explored like 10% of the sample data that is available for anybody to get from the Refinitiv. So that caused a very big problem because if you do not explain clearly, for example, from 4,000 firms available in the database and you come back to 400 or maybe 1000. So this, I'm not saying that you cannot. Yes, you can. There can be missing data issues, there can be other issues, but your explanation has to be clear that how did we end up from the 4,000 firms available in the database to only 1,000 firms that you have included in your study. That explanation, that transition has to be clear. If it is not, that causes a major issue. So what are the firms that you have included and what you have not included? That must be clear. Also, I would try to say go one more step is if you are going for financial or non-financial, if you are just choosing one, explain more that why your focus is only on financial, why not non-financial? Link it back to the problem statement. Because if you are just saying that the financial sector is different than non-financial sector, everybody knows that. But how does the problem, the research title, the examination that you're doing are more specific or more applicable for the financial or non-financial sector? Needs to be a bit more clear. So that is another issue. Sample selection, description of the sample was not up to the standard. Um, the last, and this is for me is a red sign when you design an empirical model and it does not make enough sense. That means the way you have designed the study and the way you have developed the empirical model that don't add up. So your hypothesis and the empirical model that you have designed, there is a problem. The problem is that when you are developing this empirical model, the results you will get will not allow you to explain the research issues or objectives you have designed earlier. Again, in this study, the objectives were not clear, and I can understand why, when it went on at the end, it has made several problems in the sample selection, in data collection, in the variable selection, and also the model selection and analysis. So the problem was not only in empirical model selection, but also the variables that were used in the study. Because what happened is I can see when we do secondary data, we are looking at other people's studies and we are trying to get the variables. That's all, that's fine. That's what we all do. But the thing is, we need to be clear that the definitions are clearly mentioned, and we try to provide robust proxies. What I try to mean by that is when you are having some variables which are main uh, for your study, it can be dependent, can be independent variables. Try to bring additional measures so that we can do robustness test. If you are not clear about robustness analysis, I will try to create another video later. Maybe you can see, or you can always look at the internet, and there are always available resources on what does it mean by robustness checks. But it's always good to be very clear about the definition of the variables, also why those variables are relevant for the study. Because if somebody else have used a variable in their study, it does not automatically make it compatible for the study that you are doing. So we have to be very careful that we just don't only say that, okay, I follow this paper, so this is what I'm going to use as the proxy for my variable. It may not always make sense. So when you are citing any paper, it's always good to actually go in and check what they have actually done. Just because they have used the same type of variable, it does not always mean that they are exploring the same issues. So these are the three red flags for me. Uh, you may agree or disagree, but I feel personally that to get through from the review stage to the final publication, it is very important that your paper is actually at least sound in these three areas. You have your problem statement or research problem very clear in the introduction. The methodology section is very clearly stating how did you perform the data collection, sample selection, irrespective of whether this is done by a survey-based study or a secondary database study, doesn't matter. And when you are devising your empirical study, always be very careful that your regression models are accurate, correct, and it is going to do what you have planned for this study to do. It doesn't hurt to talk with somebody who, if you are not very good in statistics or empirical studies, it will not hurt to talk about this with some experienced colleagues or any professor that is uh, available for you to talk in your department. I find this always useful to have a chat, and you don't have to share everything, but you just can strike up a conversation that in this kind of scenario, how should you approach this type of study? It's always good to have this type of conversation, and try to always keep this in your mind that uh, you can always learn something new every single day from somebody that is working with you or you have been working with for a long time. So that's it for today, and I hope that you have enjoyed the video, and thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.